Okay, you're live now.
All right, thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first Faculty Council meeting of 2021. I'm going to save my more general remarks for when we go into our joint session with the Employee Forum. But I did want to take a few minutes just to make a few announcements and to let you know how the meeting is going to work today. So the first thing is, since our last meeting, we've done all sorts of investigations, and really that's fallen to Helena to do a lot of that work, and I want to thank her for it. If people could mute, that would be terrific. Thank you. Helena has done a lot of research on whether we could change the way we're structuring the Zoom meetings in any way. And this is what's going to happen today. We're going to take this sort of meeting by meeting as we move through the spring semester in case we uncover new options. But for today, while we're in the faculty council part of the meeting where we do have several votes that we need to take, we'll be in a situation where everyone can be heard, but attendees cannot see each other. I know that's uncomfortable, but that's sort of what we need to do. When we get to the end of our voting, we'll take a brief pause and everyone will be promoted from the attendee category into the panelist category. And at that point, we'll all be able to see one another. So for the question and answer, any comments we want to make with the chancellor and the provost, we'll be able to do that together. Other questions that we have for our invited guests and comments. So I hope everyone will find that a satisfactory way to proceed. It's sort of the best that we can do. And I really do want to thank very heartily the Office of Faculty Governance for all the work that they've done in that regard, trying to sort this out. I also wanted to just let you know that we are moving forward with constituting a caregiving task force. The chancellor has agreed. This is a new iteration of, at one point, what was referred to as the chancellor's child care task force or working group, but we're going to be reconvening it in a new form. And a number of people have been very instrumental in trying to put that together. We have a draft charge at this point. We have a sort of beginning group of people. Those people at the moment are all women. And so we would very much like to have some men join in on this effort because we know that men are also very involved in caregiving. So if you would be interested in that, please contact me. I hope to have that finalized in the next week to week and a half. And I think with that, we'll just move through our agenda and then we'll move into our joint session with the Employee Forum. So first on our agenda is Meredith Petschauer, who is the committee chair on the Committee on Student she's bringing forth a resolution to amend the instrument of student judicial governance. And I will let her take that over and talk with us about that. So Meredith.
Thanks so much, Mimi. I appreciate the introduction and appreciate your time today. So our my job is to work with the Office of Student Conduct and students to hopefully make changes to the instrument that are meaningful and bring things up to date. And so what I have for you today is basically that, right? Like we're trying to put forth some of these changes so that we can make things a little bit easier in terms of navigating the system. So you should have, prior to the meeting, you should have gotten the proposed changes, kind of a brief summary, then some more detailed changes to that. And I'm going to just review those here in just a few minutes, and then I'll open it up and see if anybody has any questions. So the majority of these changes are verbiage changes, right? So we had to make changes to the language to represent the fact that the Graduate Professional Student Senate and the Undergraduate Senate are now separate entities, so that we had to go through and make all of those small changes. We needed to make some changes to sanctions for repeat offenses, just to offer the court a little bit more flexibility when giving those sanctions. We also made some changes to the qualifications and the when we choose honor court members and how long honor court members can stay, just to literally allow us a little bit more flexibility. So when things say just only spring semester and it wasn't working that way, then that becomes a little bit more challenging for us. Probably one of the biggest changes is the change to Appendix C, which is the special provisions for reduced court availability. That obviously became more of an issue during this COVID situation where we didn't necessarily have the availability of court members because of COVID. And so we wanted to be able to give students a way of resolving their cases in a speedy way, but also being fair. And so that's where that special provisions section comes in. We've also made a couple of small wording changes, and the committee that made these changes were called small changes, big impact. And we changed a few wording things like this first one, which is shall, right? So faculty members, teaching assistants, and other instructor personnel shall, as opposed to should, just gave a little bit of flexibility that we thought we didn't want there. And then kind of the final changes really were to the student instructor alternative resolution. So we call that SIR for short. And that's new. It's been there for probably 4 years, but we are continually kind of tweaking that a little bit just to make it more student friendly and a little bit easier for students and faculty to understand what we're trying to do. So that's the gist of what these changes are. The way things go is it does, and the process for approving is it has to be approved by faculty council. It has to be approved by the undergraduate student senate as well as the graduate and professional student senate. We have already gone through, these changes have already gone through the graduate and professional student senate, and you guys are next on our agenda, and then we'll go to the undergraduate students. Then once all of that comes together, basically all of this gets put in a document that then goes to the chancellor for final approval. So that's my real brief overview of the documents that you received, and I'll be happy to field any questions that you may have.
If you have questions, please use the raise hand function. And it looks like we do have a question from David Burris.
Thank you, Mimi. Meredith, I have two questions in regards to Appendix C, I believe. One is in terms of like the interim chair. It talks about like they may perform the duties of honor court chair for a definite period of time. And I was kind of wondering, what is considered like that definite period of time versus like maybe too extended where they're just taking on the duties of the honor court chair? What does that timeline look like?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The timeline there is really flexible, and part of the reason for that necessary timeline is that we have experienced in the past with individuals. We have to get those chairs have to be approved by the graduate and professional school or the undergraduate senate, right? So those have to be approved. And sometimes it's been difficult for us to get on their agendas to get that approved. So then if we are not on their agenda and we can't get that approved, then we have no one to be honor court chair, hence the interim chair period. Does that make sense? So if we put it as it for sure would be 1 month or 2 months in the document, then that kind of hamstrings us into doing something that we may not be able to do. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
We have a question in the chat or a comment. Christina, do you want to bring your issue up?
I just see two acronyms, EHP and UHB. I don't know what they mean, and I don't see them defined anywhere. I just replace those with whatever their actual meaning is.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, those are basically panels and boards, and so I can put that in parentheses. They're defined earlier in the instrument as a whole, right? But for this resolution, I appreciate that suggestion. I'll put those in parentheses for you.
I am not seeing other hands at this point. Are there other questions about this?
Are we
Comments?
ready to move to a vote? Oh, another one just popped up.
Yeah, I do have one more question. I said that it sees that for like removal of like a vice chair or an honor chair or something, it says until the recusal is deemed necessary. I was just wondering, is it established like what those would be, like what guidelines are around like removing them?
Yes, so those again, those, and I can add that to the bottom when we forward this on, but there are those guidelines in the instrument itself.
Thank you.
Any further questions that you have of Meredith at this point? All right, then I will turn it over to Ven at this point from a parliamentary standpoint.
So the question before us now is Resolution 2020-1 on amending the instrument of student judicial governance. Essentially, this is a resolution where if you vote aye, you're approving the changes in the language that the Committee on Student Conduct has brought forward. If you vote nay, then you're opposed to those changes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and proceed to the vote. We will vote using the polling feature in Zoom, which will be launched momentarily. Yes is voting in favor of the changes. No is opposition to the changes. It looks like the votes have come in, and the vote is unanimously in favor. So the motion carries, and now these changes will move forward to the Undergraduate Student Congress. Thanks to all.
Thank you. Thank you, Meredith. Thank you, Ven. So far, we are right on time. I'd like to ask Corinne Fenig, who is the chair of the Appointments, Promotion, and Tenure Committee, to give her report and also to talk with you about some thinking that the APT committee has had about potential changes that they may be bringing to us in the future. To address the impact of COVID on folks that are coming up for promotion and tenure. We had quite an interesting discussion and useful discussion, I think, about this at the Faculty Executive Committee on Monday with Ron Strauss. And so we want you all to be informed and get your thoughts about this as well. Corinne?
Okay, thank you. So as Mimi said, got two things we can discuss today. One is submitting the annual report of the activities of the APT committee. And so that I am submitting just so that you can see our activity for the past year. The committee has worked hard to do our best for the faculty and the university in that regard. The second, it does relate to COVID. So the committee is very concerned about the impacts of COVID on how it will impact tenure and promotion decisions for our faculty, not just in terms of the short-term impacts of COVID, but also the longer-term impacts, some of which may not even be predictable at this point. And so we have been developing some recommendations about how we, some things that we think that the university and units across campus could be doing to deal with those issues moving forward. We're specifically looking or thinking about developing a resolution to bring to Faculty Council that involves evaluating different ways that that we can deal with this, including considering criteria for promotion and tenure and the stringency with which criteria are applied moving forward. The use of COVID impact statements and adding those to dossiers that allow faculty to detail impacts of how COVID has impacted them, both in terms of the immediate effects, but also possible long-term effects on career development. And the use of language in solicitation of external letters that ask reviewers to also explicitly consider the impacts of COVID, while also encouraging units across campus to, for department chairs, members of the faculty who may be in situations of evaluation to also consider COVID impacts. So we would be happy to get feedback or answer questions about this as we develop these ideas for how to best move forward to serve the faculty in these times.
Is there any feedback, any conversation that we'd like to have with Corinne at this point? Personally, I think this is a great idea. I understand NC State has is using a COVID impact statement, and I think that it's a really terrific possibility. So I'm really grateful to the APT committee for considering this and for talking with our provost and chancellor about this possibility. So we'll look forward to learning more. I am not seeing hands up at this point. Anyone want to talk about this at all?
There's a question in the chat.
Oh, thank you. This is, so Ronit, would you like to ask your question directly?
Sure, thanks, Mimi.
Mhm.
I wanted to know if a blanket extension is being considered as one of the things that the committee is discussing.
So there is already a COVID extension, tenure clock extension in place. It expires this spring, is my understanding. And one of our recommendations would be for that to be extended. But I think that we're trying to understand what the implications of that are, as opposed to some of the other ways of handling the issues of COVID and the impacts of COVID. And I think, one of the things that's worth thinking about, especially for perhaps some of the longer term impacts, is that people do not necessarily want to delay coming up for tenure and promotion. So, because that of course has implications for longer term development of career and career trajectories. And so what are some other things what are other mechanisms or policies that we can put into place that sort of balances extending the tenure clock versus bringing people up given the productivity that they have under COVID. And I also want to highlight one of the things that we're considering is that the impacts of COVID have disparate impacts on different groups, women versus men, for example. And so there are already issues in terms of progress to different levels, progress to full professor that have differential impacts. And so we don't want COVID to exaggerate some of these differences that are already impacting faculty. So those are some of the things that we're thinking about as we develop some of our recommendations on this.
Thank you. One other question, if I may.
Sure.
Another issue of COVID has been limited, obviously, in-campus presence. For startup funds, is there going to be an extension for the use of those?
I don't know. That's a great question. And that's something that we can ask and talk about, especially how that might impact people's research programs. I know that one of the things that came up in conversation at the last meeting, in terms of other things that we haven't necessarily thought about, is the impacts on things like teaching evaluations as well. So a further recommendation that the committee is thinking about is how do we even begin to measure the impacts of COVID on people, the different elements of people's professional development. But that's a very good point. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I do just want to point out, so Ronit, you used the word blanket extension, and I just want to kind of hone in on that language. At this point, people ask for an extension individually. It is not a blanket extension in the way that I would sort of think about it, where it's automatic. So I just wanted to make sure we were kind of clear on that language. Is that correct, Corinne? Do I have that right?
Yes, and that's a very good point. I'm sorry, because I think it's important that faculty be able to opt into something like this rather than it being blanket, because there are some faculty who do not want to do not want an extension. They want to go ahead and move forward. And some faculty are not being impacted badly by this. So there is a lot of variation in the impacts of COVID, both across the different, across campus, but depending also on personal situations as well.
Jessica?
Thank you. I was just curious if part of this process will involve guidance to individual departments. In part, promotion to full seems to vary widely department from department what's expected. And I wondered, on your committee level, if you have come up with COVID impact statements, but also communicating to departments to rethink what they might be expecting of that, or is it really only at your committee level that you're reimagining this?
No, I think that it's going to be absolutely critical that it happens at the department level, and because it's the department level that, as you point out, especially for full professor, determines the timing of things like the timing at which people come up for promotion. So we really, in putting forward these recommendations and ultimately resolution, we want this to get down to the level of the department and the faculty that are making decisions about when they're coming up. Yes.
Thank you.
So again, very grateful that this conversation is beginning, and this is not the last time we'll talk about this as faculty council, I'm sure, and in other venues around campus. If we are there any other comments or questions for Corinne before we move on? I'm not seeing any other hands. And so certainly if there are things that come up for you, I'm sure, Corinne, it's okay if people contact you and with their thoughts or concerns, and certainly contact me, as well as I'm sure the provost wants to know people's thoughts about this as well. So the conversation doesn't have to end here if you think of things after this meeting. Otherwise, let's move to reports by title. We have, Vin, do you want to take over?
Sure. We have several reports that have been submitted, annual reports that have been submitted by committees, which have been posted to the agenda and which you've all had the opportunity to read. The chairs of those committees are present. And so I just want to ask whether there are any questions for the committee chairs of those relevant to those reports. Seeing no hands raised, I think then we can just deem those reports accepted by title. Thanks, Mimi.
Okay. So at this point, I think what we're going to do is just take a brief break so that we can promote everyone from the attendee status into the panelist status so that we'll all be able to see each other. And then we'll sort of reconvene and begin our joint meeting with the employee forum. So give us, I imagine this will take, 3 minutes or something like that. So if you need a glass of water or whatever, go right ahead.
Okay, Mimi, we're all set.
Okay, terrific. Again, many thanks to Helena, Lisa Jean, and Khadijah in the Office of Faculty Governance. Shana, did you want to start us off with some opening remarks?
Sure. Thank you, Mimi, for creating this joint meeting of faculty and staff as we navigate through what will undoubtedly be another challenging semester. I want to emphasize what we accomplished together over the past several months that may not be obvious to others. Not only did we create a space for much needed discussion and feedback as we planned for the spring semester, but we established a greater understanding of how faculty and staff are more similar than we are different. We shared fears and concerns over the virus, and we advocated for one another in the process. As we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. this month, I am reminded of his powerful statement: "We must live and learn together as brothers or perish together as fools." The latest combined efforts between the Faculty Council and the Employee Forum demonstrates our efforts towards creating such a brotherhood of advocacy. I embrace our continued partnership as we face more uncertainty in the face of COVID, internal issues related to our work, and other chaotic elements happening around the country external to our jobs. I will continue to work transparently and keep staff informed as things develop, and I commit to do so with empathy, compassion, and courage. To again quote Martin Luther King Jr., "I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear." Thank you.
Thank you, Shana. The hardest element for me of being faculty chair has been figuring out what to say to you when we convene like this. My temptation is to rally the troops, to find something that will inspire and motivate. Of course, I know that would be a fool's errand in the current context. My next go-to is reflection, to give voice to what many of us might be feeling. But after so many months of living with uncertainty and with the reality that almost every time I come before you, there is at least one new crisis to add to our list of concerns, the path of reflecting our collective emotional state also feels hollow today. What to say when the nation's capital has been ransacked by domestic terrorists, when actions to hold leaders of that movement at the very highest levels to account appear to have stagnated? How to understand a botched vaccine rollout as a new coronavirus variant is poised to be the dominant strain in the country. I so wish I could tell you Happy New Year and mean it. Of course, we are not the first humans in history to wonder if wars would be won, if our families would escape violence, whether attitudes and policies would change, and whether plagues will end. It is our turn to live through events we thought were the stuff of the distant past or a futuristic science fiction novel. When I came into this position, I was thrown into these crises, and I can't honestly tell you that I had some sort of grand strategy to approach them. I did not. What happened is that through good fortune, necessity, and what I'll call an educated intuition, I found others in leadership that were trying to navigate these waters just like I was. Shana, Reeves, and Ryan were among them. And as we've gotten to know one another and begun to think together about our campus and the challenges we encounter, we are shifting our campus culture to one that recognizes that if someone doesn't have a voice, no one has a voice. That is a slogan I'm sure I've stated and believed for some time, but now I feel it in a very different way. Last night, I was at the monthly meeting of faculty chairs from all of the UNC system campuses. The first topic was to talk about how chairs had been involved in the spring planning. These are always interesting conversations because my experiences are put into perspective when compared with what is happening elsewhere. As we talked, my contribution to the conversation was about how we had been able to be influential with our administrators because the Employee Forum, Student Government, and Faculty Governance have been working together in an unusually close way. This joint meeting that we are holding today, only the second in the history of the university, speaks to that collaborative spirit. They say that culture eats strategy for breakfast in organizations, and I believe that strongly. Good strategy is only meaningful within a healthy and inclusive culture. As an institution, I have no illusions that we are where we want to be, but the pandemic's ability to lay bare political division, racism, both personal and systemic, and a heightened need for honest, responsive, and transparent communication is forcing us to be better. I never thought I would be referencing Arnold Schwarzenegger, but in his viral video that many of you probably saw this week, he spoke about how a sword gets stronger through extremes. As an institution, I believe we are getting stronger through the extremes we are facing, individually and collectively, even though we are so tired. I'm grateful to Shana and to Reeves and Ryan for being partners on this journey, to our Chancellor and Provost for their dedication to get us through this crisis, and to all of you for participating in our gathering today and in all of our campus conversations. We have a lot to get to today. And before we begin, I want to note that we will be taking time for comment and questions within the blocks on the agenda. We will also have some time for questions at the very end. And if you're participating by live stream, please put questions in poll everywhere. And Shana and I will bring them into the conversation. We have a lot to talk about, and I'd like to begin with Chancellor Guskiewicz.
Great. Thanks, Mimi. Thank you for your leadership, Shana. Thanks for all that you do. Enjoyed participating in Employee Forum earlier this week, and it's great to be back with our faculty and staff. So I appreciate the opportunity. So I also, I hope that you were all able to take some time to rest over the holiday, try to be with friends and family, despite the isolation of the pandemic that I know we're all getting quite tired of. But I think there's hope on the horizon. Before I share updates on our work, I too want to say a few words about the events of last week on Capitol Hill. As I said that day, it was unacceptable and threatens the very ideals of our country. It was an attack on our democracy and the peaceful transfer of power that really defines our nation. And the rhetoric around not counting certain votes is disturbing and really builds on a long history of disenfranchisement across our country. And it's really part of who we are, and we have to look at that honestly. As the nation's first public university, we have a responsibility to defend and promote democracy, to fight for the values of truth, freedom, and the inherent dignity and equality of every person. And I'm proud that our strategic plan, Carolina Next, Innovations for Public Good, highlights this. Our fifth strategic initiative in that plan that we launched nearly 1 year ago on January 30th talks about promoting democracy, and it's a signature initiative of that plan. And I'm committed to this work probably more now than ever. And so I think it's going to be important as we move forward. So I want to provide an update as we prepare for the start of classes on Tuesday and look ahead to budget planning that has now entered its next phase. And so let me start with the budget and say a little more about that. A campus message went out earlier this afternoon, and it summarizes a memo that we sent to deans and unit leaders earlier this week on Wednesday. That memo went out to deans and unit leaders. When I became chancellor, I saw that it had been nearly a decade since we had a balanced budget at the university, and that we needed to fix this. And I know it's something that Provost Bluen and others on our leadership team felt as well. And we've talked at several meetings of the Employee Forum, of Faculty Council, and other meetings across campus, our Board of Trustees meetings over the past several months, about the three major challenges that we face as a university. The historic structural deficit, the COVID-related impacts, and then our growing deferred maintenance challenges. And so over the past 10 months, we've been working with leaders across campus to determine how to address these financial challenges. And so earlier this week, as the campus message indicates, we directed our schools and units university-wide to reduce personnel funds by 1.5% and operating funds by 7.5% for fiscal year 2021 and fiscal year 21-22. These budget measures that we're putting in place are consistent with those that we had put in place at the beginning of the pandemic, and will continue to keep those measures, those COVID-related measures in place until further notice. This will enable the university to eliminate the $100 million structural deficit in central funds by the end of fiscal year 21-22. So by June 30th of 2022, we will have reconciled that deficit. This plan will also better prepare us for the still unknown pandemic impacts, and will eventually create what I've enjoyed talking about the most, and that is to create a strategic reinvestment fund that really will allow all of our units across campus to sort of be a part of Carolina Next, and to be able to fulfill their vision that's laid out in each of their strategic plans within their schools. So deans and unit leaders will have the autonomy in specifically identifying how they will make their cuts. However, we have set forth some guiding principles for them to follow. And I'm pleased that we have engaged a lot of people in these discussions over the past several months about how we should move forward. Some of the examples that we've laid out regarding reductions, we want them to be consistent with the university strategic plan that we've been talking about. We're also looking for some strategic vertical reductions, not simply across the board cuts. And we're asking deans to consult broadly about how to implement these reductions. This isn't going to be easy, but I feel confident that we can get through this together. It's the responsible thing to do for the future of our university. And in doing this, we will, as we have said repeatedly over these past many months, we'll aim to protect our mission and our people. I just want to thank Interim Vice Chancellor for Finance and Operations, Nate Knuffman. You know Nate, many of you have seen Nate at our faculty council and employee forum meetings. He and his team and many others across the university have been involved in this process, and we're grateful for all their hard work. Turning to this semester, with a record number of COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations in North Carolina and around the country, we made the decision to move the start of in-person undergraduate classes to February 8th, and we announced that earlier last week. And we really did this to try to provide as much flexibility as possible for a safe return to campus. And as I said before, and we have to continue to be vigilant and realize that there will be COVID cases on our campus, and we're prepared to handle them. The asymptomatic testing program, which we piloted back in the fall semester, has now been implemented. We began testing on Monday, and as of yesterday, we had tested over 2,500 people. The Carolina Together testing program is available for all students, faculty, and staff who are coming to campus. And I had the opportunity, along with Bob Lewin and others, to get a tour of the laboratory over in the Genome Sciences building last Saturday. And then this past Monday, I had the opportunity to go through the testing over at the Student Union, and just been so impressed with the tremendous work that's been done. I know that some of the people who have played an important role in this are with us this afternoon. Dr. Amir Barzan, who I know has spoken to the Faculty Council and Employee Forum on a number of occasions, has been incredible in leading this effort alongside Amy James Loftus, Chris McClure, Mike Barker, Ian Balcom, and others who have been instrumental in making this possible. I was also a part of a Zoom call earlier this week with Dr. Barzan and Dr. Meg Zamarodi, and over 200 students who are volunteering with the testing program. And I think we're calling this Meg's Army. These are students that Meg has recruited, and I'm just grateful for their commitment to keep our campus safe, and the number of ways that they're going to help us to carry out this plan over the next several months. With respect to the vaccine, certainly there's light at the end of the tunnel, but we still have a long ways to go. We're getting regular updates. I just spoke with Dr. Wesley Burks this morning to get an update on the plan for UNC Healthcare. Bob and I have regular meetings with Orange County Health Department leadership. In fact, we have a call at 5 o'clock today with Quintana Stewart and Erica Pettigrew. And we're also working closely with Kathy Brennan here on our campus. What I want you to know is that we are advocating for our staff, for our faculty who are frontline workers on campus to receive that vaccine as soon as possible, not to jump the line of somebody who desperately needs it or to jump outside of the guidelines that are in place for the county and the state, but to be sure that we are ready with the names of those individuals who are essential front-facing employees here on our campus. And just so you know, that those that fall into this category are our food service workers, our housekeepers, our police officers, our maintenance staff, our transit workers, and our in-person university faculty who will most likely be grouped along with our K-12 teachers in North Carolina. There's still some questions around the interpretation of where that group falls in the phased vaccination plan, but we're gathering as much information as we can, as quickly as we can, and we'll continue to provide updates. But again, I'm grateful for the work of so many people in this planning and in making the adjustments that we've had to make. I'm grateful for the Campus and Community Advisory Committee, which Mimi, Shana, and Reeves co-chaired. So I know all of you are here. Ryan, thanks for all your work as we continue to stay in touch with you on to be sure that we're also caring for our graduate students and professional students. We are fortunate, as we've said over and over, that we have some of the best infectious disease and public health experts in the country. We'll continue to consult with them, as well as our Orange County health officials, and we're grateful for all their work. Finally, I just want to acknowledge this weekend, in the midst of starting classes, we don't want to forget the holiday on Monday, as both Shana and Mimi have already mentioned. I'm looking forward to the virtual Martin Luther King events where we can remember and honor Dr. King's legacy, including the annual banquet on Sunday and the lecture with Black Lives Matter co-founder Patrice Cullors. And so it's going to be a busy week, and I hope that many of you will join us in those events. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bob, and I also want to just acknowledge Bob and thank him for all his hard work as we were able to stand up this Carolina Together testing program back many weeks ago, although it was pulled together in record fashion. So Bob, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Let me just, I'll try to be brief in my comments, but perhaps building upon some of your comments, Kevin, with regards to the Carolina Together testing program. As I've mentioned to several other people, this is perhaps one of the best examples of Carolina collaboration that I've seen since I've been here. I was talking to Amir earlier, and he mentioned that well over 1,000 people have contributed in some way in terms of the creation, development of this laboratory. And just to give you a sense of the magnitude of this, we are currently doing right now about 1,000 tests per day. We will be able to ramp up to several thousand tests per day. But as recently as 7 weeks ago, we had nothing. We had no lab space dedicated, no equipment, and all of that had to be identified, to be purchased, to go online, to be tested, to recruit the talent from across the campus. And I can't thank our partners in the UNC Healthcare, the School of Medicine, School of Public Health, and so many of the other schools across campus who have contributed in so many different ways to helping make this possible. And so I think because of the creation of the on-campus testing site, it I think should give all of us a little bit more confidence, that this spring will be a success for all of us. As I mentioned, we have performed over 2,500 tests to date. You may be interested in knowing that the positivity rate out of those tests so far is approximately 0.5%. And so that's a very good number. We certainly know that number is going to change over time. But I think it is a testament to our students, both on and off campus, for taking care of themselves during the break and coming back to campus in good shape. I do want to just let everybody know that the testing program will be closed for the Martin Luther King holiday. And so I would suggest that those people who are trying to arrange for time for their test, or just thinking about the scheduling or planning, that you just keep that in your mind. Also, the testing sites, right now we have the main site at the Student Union, but the other two sites will be coming online at the beginning of the weekend. On Saturday, the facility Current, which is located near Franklin Street, with good access to parking and mass transit, will be opened on Saturday. And then Rams Head will be open on Tuesday. So that should give all of our faculty, staff, and students a lot of choices in terms of where they might want to be tested, whether they would prefer to walk or prefer to take a car or mass transit to the testing site. And I want to repeat that it is available to all faculty, staff, and students. In the past, in the fall testing, the testing site was primarily available to our students. So this is available to everyone, and it is free of charge to everyone. This is a asymptomatic testing site, and so these are for people who do not have any symptoms. We again want to encourage all of our faculty who have voluntary testing to continue to perform the practice of doing their self-examination and documenting that self-examination daily on the Carolina Together website. So that would be greatly appreciated if everybody would stay faithful to that. And I also just want to remind everybody, as you think about your planning for getting tested, if you have not registered in the website for via the what is it, Hall Pass site, I would suggest that you do that in advance of going to the site. It would just make things a little bit easier for you. It would reduce your time through that particular site to get tested. And so with that introduction, I too would like to just say it's nice to see everybody back, and Happy New Year to all of you, even though it seems a lot like 2020. We were hoping that 2021 would be distinctively different. It sure is feeling a lot like last year, but we look forward to a good year nonetheless. So Mimi, let me turn it back over to you and open up for comments or questions.
Great, thank you both. Appreciate all of those updates. And we do have questions in the chat, and we have some hands raised. So let me start with the question in the chat. I'm going to maybe start with a few questions related to the budget and then move into another area. Jessica Boone asks, is the 7.5% for 2 years cumulative? In other words, 15% over 2 years.
So yes, so at the end of 2022, it'll be it'll equate to 15%. Now, remember, this is just of our operational budget, our central funds, which includes tuition, appropriations, and F&A funds, which is about 1.2 billion of our $3.5 billion overall budget. And so the other thing I would add, I know that sounds like a big number, but because of the COVID-related impact and the measures we put in place early on, many units have already saved, funds from and the non-personnel restrictions that were put in place, the many positions that went unfilled. So I just mentioned that number is not quite as dramatic as it may seem.
There's a question that's coming in from Poll Everywhere that says, if the budget hasn't been balanced since 2010, why is it important to balance the budget in the midst of the pandemic? Why not wait until it's over?
Because we still don't have, as I mentioned in my comments, we don't have yet an idea as to what the pandemic related impacts are going to look like over time. We're doing everything we can to try to help mitigate that, but we can't have this deficit growing. We also don't know what the impact might be to appropriation in 2022 as a result of the pandemic. And so this is a responsible thing to do, to put the measures in place now. And I know it's not going to be easy, as I've said, but we have deans and vice chancellors and others who are committed to this. And so we're going to work together to get there. And Bob, you may want to jump in as well. I mean, Bob has been at the table for all these conversations as well.
Yes, I would just echo, Kevin, what you said, and also as we try to prepare, for the future and the unknown, we have to come to terms with our spending. We cannot continue to spend more than what we have, and so as I look at it, there are many reasons, why we're in the situation that we're in, and it sort of started back in 2008, with the dot-com burst, and there were many budget cuts from the state, and we've had some challenges, since then, and so if we don't do it now, then we will be in a much worse position down the road as other new challenges come before us. We don't know what those will look like. We do know that COVID-19 is going to have an additional impact on this university. We also know that COVID-19 is likely to have an impact on the state, and not necessarily this fiscal year, but in the fiscal year after this. So we want to make sure that we do the responsible thing and get the university on a good path forward. The other thing that I would say is that it will be very difficult down the road to make the kind of strategic investments that this university is going to need to make in order to stay competitive and with our peers. And so we want to make sure that we take care of that. But we before we can even get close to that, we have to get the budget under control.
If I could just add one more thing to this, to what Bob just said. We're very fortunate, despite the need to put these, this plan in place to address this. Very fortunate that our research funding has continued to stay on a very strong trajectory throughout the pandemic. Our enrollment numbers have remained strong, and we're right in the middle of the capital campaign, which has just had the best December that we've seen in I think maybe the best December ever. We're checking on that, but up 19% from where we were last December. So there's still a lot of positive things to lean on, and that I think will also help us to get through this.
Shana, are there some staff questions you want to bring in? And then I notice we have a couple of faculty hands raised.
Sure. There's one in the chat, and it's combined sort of with another idea. Earlier, when we were talking about furloughs, a statement was issued from HR saying that nobody below a certain threshold would be impacted. And I'm wondering if that still stands. And then the specific question is, what is being done to protect our lowest paid employees from the impacts of a 1.5 per year personnel budget cut. As you can well imagine, somebody who's not making a whole lot of money, a 1.5 over 2 years, totaling a 3% cut, could be sort of devastating to somebody's family operating budget.
Sure. I mean, I'll jump in first. So I know Becky is working really hard with human resources down at the system office and through the state to be sure that we have, she's talked about the toolbox. What do we have to work to, that we can work through? Right now, the furlough option is not one that that we are putting in place, with the exception of some of those auxiliary units that were put in place early on, but there were very few employees that were affected by that. But I know she's talked, as we all have, about making sure we're protecting our people. And I know that the lowest paid employees, if we were to put a sort of a graduated furlough, temporary furlough program in place, it would be one that very likely would not affect those at some threshold. I don't remember what threshold that we were discussing previously, but again, there's still a lot of information we're trying to gather around how furloughs would be put in place if in fact we needed to go there. Bob, I don't know if you have any additional updates from Becky.
Yeah, so Shannon, just to be clear that when we talk about a 1.5% reduction in the salary, that's in the pool, not in an individual's salary. And so just want to make sure that that point is clear.
And can I ask you to clarify, is that the pool that encompasses all salaries, faculty and staff, or?
All state appropriated funds.
All right, thank you.
Okay, why don't we go to some folks asking their own questions. Deb, you want to start out?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Chancellor Guskowicz and Provost Bluin, we wanted to really thank you for taking the time and trouble to lead us in this difficult time. I have a question relating to the schedule for spring 2021. We really appreciate, I think we were the only university doing that, where we announced that on January 9, we will have a touchstone point. And we did not even have to wait that long when you announced that for 3 weeks we will have a remote experience. So, and it was based on the hope that in 3 weeks the situation will get better. And I know nobody can predict that, but would you like to also have another touchstone point like February 1, when we would know where the COVID rates are going, so that it would help our students and faculty who can make arrangements accordingly?
I mean, I would just say, I think every day is a touchstone, Deb, honestly. And so, I mean, we are monitoring this daily. As I said, we're on with Orange County Health Department at least once, if not twice a week. The updates that we're receiving from the models that our public health officials are working on, our public health faculty are working on. And Bob, I know, I think just saw a presentation on this here recently, and I may have him jump in. So we're not going to set a specific date by which we would say, okay, we're going to alter the plan any further. These decisions are, we're making decisions daily around the operations of the university. My goal again is about the health and safety of the campus community, as well as providing as much flexibility, such as we received a lot of appreciation and thank yous from families who just said that additional 3 weeks to be able to travel back to Chapel Hill for their student was appreciated, and they didn't have to rush back when maybe it wasn't the safest time to travel to take that in-person class. So we will continue to monitor this. Bob, I don't know, I think you've seen some of the recent modeling. I don't know if you want to jump in.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. And Deb, you make a really good point. Obviously, the sooner we can inform people of change, the better for everyone. I think we all understand that. But I think that Kevin is absolutely right, that we have to deal with this on a day-to-day basis. We have been very fortunate. I think many of you know Audrey Pettifor, and she has assembled a really world-class group of modelers who have done really a fantastic job of beginning to take a peek at various plans, under different scenarios. And so they have promised to continue to work on those in real time daily and report back to us on a week-to-week basis. So we will be getting the very latest data based upon the data that we are generating to see whether or not the model is predictive or not, and then what adjustments we might want to make, based upon that data. So this is a real-time project, and we will be incorporating that. And we're very appreciative of the work that Audra, Justin, Paul, and Jess, members of her team, are doing in this space.
We're appreciative of it too. Jessica, did you want to come in with a question?
Yes, thank you. I think I've heard already a number of faculty raise questions about the emails that came through today. One, the budget email announcing stringent cuts, or at least so it appears to us, and another email announcing the hiring of further administrative positions. So I wondered if you could address what the need is for more administrators in a moment of budgetary limitations, and more generally in higher education, the fact that in the 21st century, the percentage of administrators at a new university has greatly risen. The percentage of tenure track and tenured faculty has fallen. I think it would help the faculty and staff understand the balance here.
Well, the memo that we sent out today had some principles outlined at the end of it, and it's actually it was similar to what was sent to the deans and unit leaders earlier in the week, and it talks about one of those talks about cutting the need to potentially cut senior level positions, and so I think everything is on the table, but again, decisions need to be made strategically. They need to involve leadership within the schools and the departments, and the faculty and staff, I think, need to be part of these conversations. So I'm not sure of the additional memo. I did receive a message saying that there was another unit or two that was talking about new positions. I don't know if those are filling vacant positions or new administrative positions, but I think everything's on the table, and we're allowing units to have the autonomy to make the decisions and to meet the needs within their schools and departments.
Thank you.
Shana, are there questions you want to bring in?
There is one in the chat now. It says in earlier meetings, vertical cuts were included among the potential tools for managing the budget. At what level would those decisions be handled if vertical cuts are still options being considered?
Over the next 3 to 4 weeks, that's what the schools and units will be doing now that they have the target numbers that we need to try to balance the budget over these next 18 months. They will work with their teams to decide some combination of strategic vertical cuts in combination likely with some horizontal cuts, and that's going to be left up to them. But now this will happen over the next 3 to 4 weeks as their plans are developed and then submitted back to our finance and operations teams. And I'll just add that we had conversations with all of the leads over the past 4 or 5 months. This did not come to a surprise to the leadership of these schools and units. We had a series of budget meetings beginning back in August and September that went up through mid-November. We had a series of meetings with the leads of all the finance leads and the deans and or associate vice chancellors in mid-December, notifying that final decisions would be made by mid-January. And so with implementation beginning at some point in February.
There's a question from Poll Everywhere. In this afternoon's formal notice on the budget update, it's noted, in addition, we will have the ability to reinvest in school and unit initiatives that align with the goals of Carolina Next. Can you explain how reinvestment is preferable to greater offsets of the negative impact of 1.5% plus 1.5% budget cuts on personnel?
Yeah, I think it's an important question, and one that, as I said, the memo also talks about the need to have, once the budget is balanced, we have to, we hopefully then have a net there to take care of the unknown COVID-19 impacts, which again are unknown and could. We could be sitting here in a year and a half from now, still with some impacts there. And so that's what we're hopeful that we can get to where we have that to be able to take care of units that are in need. And then eventually we hope that we'll have a fund, as Bob and I and others have been talking about for over a year pre-pandemic, about investing in those important initiatives that are outlined in Carolina Next. And we've been talking about this for many months to schools to be thinking about how their own strategic plans align with the strategic plan for the university. And I'm personally feel very good about the way schools have in fact done that. And I think are aligning with Carolina Next. Bob, I don't know if you'd add anything to that.
I just think it's important for everyone to realize that the budget cuts are not funding a reinvestment fund at this moment. What we're doing is positioning the university so that at some point down the road, we will be in the position to be able to reinvest in important areas that are important to the long-term interests of the university, individual units. But if we can't get our arms around the budget, then there would be no opportunity for us to make such reinvestments. But I think it's very important to realize that this cut is not funding a reinvestment pool at this moment. It's necessary in order for us to get the budget balanced so that then we would have the opportunity to make such reinvestments down the road.
Thank you. There are also questions about early retirement. We have a couple of those. People asking if that's an option that would assist in offsetting budget consequences.
I know that Becky Mangini and her team are in conversations. Her colleagues across the system, in counterparts across the system, are in conversations about that as an option. She talks often about that as being a potential tool in the toolbox for helping.
Okay, so more on that to come, it sounds like. Okay, and then a question in the chat: how specifically will units communicate their budget reduction process and eventually their decisions to faculty and staff?
Bob, do you want to take that? I know you've met with the deans most recently.
Yeah, I think what the approach has been that the central office, that we would provide general guidelines, general principles. I think the guiding principles that the chancellor mentioned are intended to do that, to guide the way in which people would make those decisions. How they communicate that, I think each unit is going to do that perhaps in a slightly different way, depending upon whether they're in a departmental structure or a single department structure. So that might vary from individual to individual, and also might vary from whether or not the cut is being delivered to a school or to a center or to an institute. So there'll probably be a lot of variability. What we have promised, and what Nate indicated and I indicated today at the Dean's meeting, is that finance, the offices of finance and HR will be working hand in glove with the individual units to help in whatever way we can to make sure that this is a smooth process.
We have some questions that are one related to vaccines and one related to plans about commencement. But I think the last question that maybe relates specifically to this topic would be, are there things being done to retain and support staff specifically? The focus on retention is often on faculty and not on staff.
And can I elaborate on that just a little bit from things that I'm hearing from staff as well? I think we came into COVID at sort of a critical threshold of reducing staff to a point where we can no longer effectively function with less staff. So we came into COVID with a skeletal crew, because I think we have used cutting staff as a way to get to a better budget situation historically. Now we're seeing positions not being filled, and staff, I don't know if you're aware of the career banding structure, but you can't get additional duty pay for doing duties at lower level jobs. So if you are a manager and you are doing the duties of two of the people that were under you, you can't get compensated for that. And so I think staff are really at a critical point where they're just taking on more and more and more. And I don't think cutting any more in those areas is going to be effective. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that when we talk about retaining our staff, but not overwhelming them.
Yeah, if I could, maybe I could give that a try, Kevin.
Sure.
I think this goes back to the chancellor's point of not just making horizontal cuts, but making vertical cuts. And there are many things that we do at this university that are very, very important. But there are some things that we're doing that we have done because of historical reasons, and that perhaps some of those programs need to be reevaluated and possibly even eliminated. And I think that those are very difficult decisions for any unit leader to make. But to your point, Shana, that we cannot just reduce and then spread the work to spread more work to fewer people. So we have to be very strategic in the way these cuts are being made, and make sure that we are doing our best. And maybe there will be some additional strain, but to do our best to not just pile more work on to those who are left.
Yeah, Shane, I agree. Thanks for the comment. And I want, I know Becky has indicated to me that she's going to be, members of her team are meeting with employee forum representatives, I believe next week, to actually talk about this issue. And so I will make sure that she gets back to Bob and to me on this, because we know it's a concern. We meet weekly to look at the positions that are coming through to try to, and again, as we've already said, we have not filled many vacant positions, and we realize that has put a added burden on many of our staff. And so we will do everything to try to protect them, as we said. But as Bob said, there will need to be some difficult decisions made around potential programs that aren't aligned at this time, and that's where those strategic vertical cuts may have to take place.
And I do just want to remind everybody that both the chancellor and I, we got a letter too. And so we have the same burden that all the deans and the unit leaders have to find that same percentage of allocated resource to our environment. So we know how hard these decisions are and how painful this will be for many, because we will be feeling that same pain.
And if I could just, if it's okay, Mimi, since there was a question about commencement, and before I forget, there's a commencement email going out shortly. We were hoping to get it out today, but it may end up being Monday. But it is to all students who we believe are eligible for graduating in May, the May of 2021. It's a survey similar to what we sent out back in the fall, summer, fall, about what type of commencement they would like, how could we celebrate their accomplishments. It's highly unlikely that we would have a large Keenan Stadium ceremony that everybody's craving. but we are looking at some options for potentially a series of like a weekend of smaller outdoor type events if our county health department thinks that that would be safe at that point by mid-May. We still don't know. It would, as we know, we had football games in Keenan Stadium this year with a limited capacity of I think 36 or 3,700. So if my guess is that we'd have similar restrictions like that, but so more to come on commencement, but is on our minds, and we know it's on the minds of many of our graduating students and their families.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to Kathy Brennan and hear more about vaccines. I know people want to know up to the minute information on that.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so I just wanted to provide a quick update on the university's vaccination planning. And it has been rapidly changing day to day. So the federal government obviously provides guidance to the states, and each state is able to decide how to prioritize the vaccination rollout. And so we are obviously following North Carolina's guidance. And yesterday they did change the phases for who gets vaccinated first. So we have a small vaccination working group that we've been meeting since December 1st. And we really focused back then, the first phase was high risk healthcare workers. So we really focused on getting our community members that are in those groups, whether it be School of Medicine providers who work in the medical center or students who might be doing rotations in the medical center. So we were able to integrate with UNC Health and get a bunch of people vaccinated that met that definition. And then the second phase that was launched was 75 years and older. And then within a couple days, the state changed it, and now it's 65 years or older. So that's the most recent up-to-date guidance from the state. The next phase is frontline workers, and we're anticipating that frontline essential workers will not be able to be vaccinated for quite some time, because with the change to the 65 years and older, that's quite a larger group. But we are, working to define who those frontline workers are, and we will, designate those people through the state system. The other thing I was going to say is just that we've also been integrated with the Orange County Vaccine Planning Task Force. We've been helping ensure the community around us is also being vaccinated. There's a vaccination site at the RR parking lot on Estes that we have helped them stand up. And we've also loaned them a couple ultra low freezers to ensure that they can store their vaccines. So we're trying to integrate both with UNC Health and Orange County. And I'm happy to answer questions. I know that it's been changing rapidly and it's hard to keep up with what's going on.
So one question asked that from Eric Mullers is that various states include teachers as a group. I've been assuming that this refers to K through 12 and not university level. Is that correct?
Yeah, so North Carolina has in their essential worker definition educators, but it actually does not specifically say whether or not that's just K through 12 or if it does include institutes of higher education educators. And we have asked the state and advocated that those educators do be added to that definition. I know they discussed it last week, but we have not seen public guidance on if they're going to make that more specific. So we're kind of waiting to see what the state says on that. But we do believe, we've advocated for it, and we're hoping that they will include institutes of higher education educators.
Okay, thanks. Ryan, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Catherine, for being here today. I represent our graduate and professional student population, and one of the questions that I have received. Actually, I have two questions, but the first one has to do with the individuals that work in medical laboratory research community. So we have a number of students that work in the healthcare fields, either medicine or nursing, that have already been getting vaccinated because of the role they play in health affairs. But we have a number that work in medical laboratory research that haven't. Do you know where they would fit into that vaccination plan? Both the faculty in that area as well as graduate research assistants.
Yes, so we have, so we do obviously have laboratory researchers who are working with like COVID clinical samples and things like that. So they would be considered part of that healthcare worker list. If you're talking about just kind of basic research lab workers that aren't necessarily working with COVID, I think that's another thing we have to think about in terms of frontline, is if they would be considered frontline. One of the things to think about with frontline workers is typically those are people that work 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week in front of the public, or they're not able to necessarily maintain 6 feet distance while they're at work. So I think we're going to have to kind of dig into that and see, would they meet that definition or would they not?
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mimi.
Oh, yeah, you go ahead. I'm sorry, Ryan.
It's just a follow-up on the Professor Muller's question about the educator's definition and trying to advocate that teacher or that university faculty be included in that. Are you also advocating that any graduate teaching assistants that will be teaching in person are included in that group?
Yes, yeah. So it would be anybody that is an educator, whether, you know, that's a TA that's working, for example, in a lab class, you know, that is running a lab and teaching 30 students or however amount of students. So yes, it would include graduate students as well.
Thank you.
So two things coming in the chat. First, a comment that says an email from the town of Chapel Hill an hour ago says the guidance from North Carolina DHHS lists higher education instructors and support staff as essential frontline workers.
Oh,
So,
okay, great.
Yep.
So they must have just released it.
Okay. And then Jessica, would the university differentiate between faculty grad instructors who are in person versus those who are fully remote in terms of classifying them as frontline essential workers? Which
Yeah.
it sounds like, I mean, I guess one thing, just to zoom out for a minute, is that it doesn't, so the university is advocating for our faculty and staff to be vaccinated at the earliest possible date and to be included in these definitions. But it's not necessarily the university's job to, I mean, or in what ways is the university saying this person versus that person? I think is sort of the more general question. Some of these are quite specific.
Sure. So for example, with the healthcare workers, we actually had to upload the names and emails of the specific individuals that met the eligibility criteria to the state system. And then that told the state that they met the criteria and could register to be vaccinated. So we anticipate the same thing happening with frontline essential workers. The employer would designate those people as being eligible. Versus like with the age requirement, the employer has nothing to do with it. Obviously, you can self-identify as being over the age of 65 to get your vaccination.
I see. Okay. Deb, do you want to ask your question?
Catherine, we really appreciate your leadership in this whole initiative. I have a quick question. I have heard of some people on campus who do not want to take the vaccine for whatever reason. So is the university going to recommend or require people to take the vaccine? Because as you know, they would provide a risk to anybody, to their colleagues.
Yeah, so at this time, we recommend that people get the vaccination. We are not requiring it. That's pretty typical. For example, the flu vaccination, that's the same for the flu vaccination. It's not required. We highly recommend it. We communicate out that, you know, it's a good thing to get the flu vaccination. And that's, you know, that's one of the reasons we're trying to communicate out as much as possible about information about the vaccine, when people are eligible for the different phases, and how they can actually schedule and make an appointment.
But we cannot mandate it as a university because, you know, we are in a pandemic. It's not like the fall flu where you take it or you do not take it, you will be fine. In this case, it really provides a clear and present danger if like 5 of your colleagues have chosen not to take it and they have not told you about it.
I think the issue is, Deb, that under emergency use authorization, you can't make it mandatory that's federal law. That's so both Audrey and Meg are putting that in the chat, and that's what I've read as well.
Thank you for clarifying that.
And in addition to that, just to offer up, we have been giving some thought as to whether or not we should or try to mandate the vaccine at some point in the future after that FDA approval is formally made. And we have had some informal conversations with legal counsel around that question. So Deb, that's something that is being explored down, but we really haven't considered all the factors that could influence that decision yet.
So as a follow-up, are there any alternatives? Like, let's say somebody has taken the vaccine, but as you know, the vaccine is not the ultimate assurance. Are there any other initiatives that we are taking besides what we have to make sure that we are all safe on campus?
Well, I think the 3 W's, you know, they stand in for the vaccine, right? That's yeah.
Yeah, and I think we're going to be stuck with the 3 W's even after the vaccine for a time. All of our experts, you know, clearly state that.
Thank you.
I think there are some other issues coming up for staff, and this is repeated in the poll anywhere, so I thought I'd mention it, that there are staff that work with students in a non-teaching capacity, and I think the request is that they be considered in the essential workers category as well, because they have interaction with staff, but just not in a teaching capacity.
Yeah, I do. I think, you know, as we get closer to that phase where we are going to be looking at who specifically are essential and frontline workers, that's the kind of thing that we're going to reach out to people and, you know, to units and ask, who do you think is a frontline essential worker? And then we'll make those lists and decisions based on, you know, what we get back from people. Because obviously it's pretty easy to look at, you know, we know housekeepers, maintenance workers, the educators piece that we've already discussed, but there's a lot of employees on campus that we might not even understand I don't even know what they do, right? So we have to ask those questions to the units.
Great. You can include the student services folks, all of them.
All right.
Okay, terrific. Let's see. Okay, Jill, do you want to provide the information that you have, it sounds like?
Sure. I've
Thank
turned
you.
on my volume. Let me see if I can get my picture going here. Sorry, I was dark. This is Jill Moore. I'm at the School of Government, and I am a member of the NC Institute of Medicine's Advisory Committee on the vaccine. We're advising NC-DHHS on the priority groups. And we had a meeting just before this one. So I do have a little bit of information that I didn't think was public yet, but based on what someone said they heard from Orange County Health Department, I guess that information has come out. We have been having discussions regarding who goes in the essential frontline worker group. And my understanding as of earlier this afternoon, what my expectation is that university faculty and staff will be considered to be in that group, but only if they meet certain criteria. There'll be a couple of screening questions. One, of whether the person has to be on site in order to perform their work duties, and whether their work duties bring them within 6 feet of other people. So that was where it was as of earlier today. But I don't believe that's out in writing yet. I would watch for that early next week.
Thank you, Jill. Okay, let's see. I think I'm not seeing, Shana, do you see other questions related to this? I don't see hands up.
I do not. I think other than just a quick reminder that the Novavax vaccine trial at UNC will continue to enroll volunteers. UNC staff who are at risk of exposure to COVID-19 through their work but are not in a group prioritized to receive the vaccine as soon as other groups can be prioritized for this study. They will want to consider whether they wish to risk being in the placebo group, but there is a 2 in 3 chance that they will receive study vaccine. They will also be asked to commit to 2 full years of the study. So wanted to make sure people knew that that was going on right here on our campus.
Thanks. Meg, do you want to tell us about this initiative that you're leading?
Sure. So hello, everybody. My name is Meg Zomarodi. I am a professor in the School of Nursing. I'm also the assistant provost for the Office of Interprofessional Education and Practice. And one of the things that I do under that office is really work with students to help engage them in learning from, with, and about each other and how they can advance health. So this is a great opportunity for our campus. So this initially began kind of in the summer when our students in the health professions were pulled out of clinical settings. We wanted them to feel like they could still contribute in a meaningful way as they helped health professionals dealing with the impact of COVID. And they did a variety of activities. We found a model based off of Columbia University called the Columbia Student Services Corps, and we actually gave it a little bit of a Carolina twist and now have the Carolina Student Services Corps. Then when we knew about the Carolina Together program and all the work that was going to go into keeping our community on campus safe, we revised it and focused very internally on what our students can do here. We opened it up to undergraduate students as well, and it really became a win-win because many of our undergraduate students who desire to go into graduate programs, whether they are health professional programs or whether they are law school or business school and they need service learning opportunities, they haven't had a chance to have those because everything has really been restricted because of COVID. For our health professional students, pre-health students, they're not even allowed to volunteer in the hospital. So having exposure to clinical roles during this time is proving incredibly challenging. And so with that, we created the Carolina COVID Student Services Corps that for students who serve on this campus for 75 hours or more during this semester will get a certificate as well as several incentives along the way. And we've built up opportunities for them to engage and connect in a safe manner and learn through virtual shadowing experiences too, more about many of the clinical roles and the impact that we're seeing with health. And, you know, again, we've highlighted some of this today. The partnerships across this campus are really one of the things that make Carolina so great. Lynn Blanchard has brought in resources from her Buckley Student Services Scholars. Ron Strauss has offered great advice for me. Debbie Clark has helped connect me to so many people. And then, of course, Ed Fisher is helping thinking about these pods and keeping our students safe. But the real work is partnering with Amir Barzan and the work that he's doing in these labs. So our students are helping to man the COVID testing stations. Everything that we are doing is safe. The students are not at high risk for COVID exposure in the work that they're doing. They're also helping with contact tracing. They are helping with data review and communications and health promotion materials. And they're helping with kit making to go back in to those COVID testing centers. Students are volunteering for so many reasons, including their desire to serve is really what I hear the most. And it has just been phenomenal to hear these students talk about why they want to give back to Carolina. And with that, I'd like to actually have Helena pull up a video so that you can hear the students talk more about each of the roles that they are doing and why. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of our student leaders. I don't hear it.
That's too bad.
Yeah, maybe I can share mine and try it. I don't know if that will work. Yeah, I don't know. Helena, do you see that the share audio at the lower left corner?
And I'm here to basically help you with any questions or concerns that you guys might have.
At UNC, and I'm a current junior. The buckets that I'm overseeing are the prior to arrival data review and the CTTP email team. So if you guys are members of that and have any questions or just want to talk, really, feel free to shoot me an email. And what I'm really excited about for my buckets are that we're pretty much like the front line. We're making sure that before everybody arrives to campus, that everybody's safe. And
Hi, everyone. My name is Emmeline Fleming. I'm a freshman here at Carolina on the pre-nursing track. I'm working with the testing sites program, and I'm here to basically help you with any questions or concerns that you guys might have. The main roles of these volunteers will be to greet people as they walk into the door, direct them to the table, give them testing instructions, answer any questions, make sure that the space and the area around you guys is consistently clean. And sometimes you may be asked to deliver boxes of swabs to the testing lab. I know that I can speak on behalf of most freshmen here at Carolina when I say it's been hard to be a part of something, but this is a very unique opportunity where you can not only help with COVID relief efforts, but also meet people and meet new friends in a safe environment. You'll mostly see me at the Student Union testing site. And if you are interested in that location, there is a group me on Sakai under the testing sites tab. But I want to emphasize that there's also another group me for anyone that is interested in volunteering at any testing site, where Moss, Emily, and I are going to send updates, help with any questions or concerns that you guys might have while you're volunteering or before, or just if you want clarification. So yeah, I'm excited for this upcoming semester, and I can't wait to meet some of you guys. Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm Emily. I'm working with Emmeline and Moss, and I'm a senior here at Carolina. I'm an exercise and sports science major and a chemistry minor. And I'm also working with the testing sites program. And I'm really excited about these testing sites and their opportunities, because I think it's a really unique opportunity to get some hands-on volunteering, especially for not only, but especially for pre-health students who may have struggled during the pandemic to find meaningful volunteering. I think this is it's almost like you're on the front lines working with the testing of students and other campus members just to keep the operations of the university running. So I think this is gonna be a really awesome opportunity. I'll mostly be at the current art space, which is kind of towards North Campus, if you're interested in volunteering there. And I encourage everyone who is comfortable and willing to sign up for some testing sites and get in on that action. It'll be really awesome.
Hey everyone, my name is Moss. I am a senior neuroscience major going into my last semester. I'm also part of the COVID testing site, so I'll be working with Emily and Emma, helping out with facilitating and adapting to the new standard norms of how we're going to handle this pandemic on campus. I'm excited for this because I think it's definitely a unique opportunity, especially that we have student leaders who are experiencing the same kind of struggles. And a lot of your lives have changed drastically since this whole pandemic hit. And, seeing that it's my last semester, as Meg said, I'm excited to give back to the community that's given back so much to me. Thank you.
Hey everybody, my name is Jack Womble. I'm a second semester senior here at UNC, unfortunately. And I'm majoring in exercise and sports science, double minoring in neuroscience and chemistry. So I am leading two different groups. I'm a part of the ambassadors group as well as communications, both of which sort of have the same overall goal. I'm here to serve to help answer any questions that you have. And my volunteers for the ambassadors will definitely encourage, the COVID health regulations that are set forth in terms of mask wearing and social distancing and, washing your hands and doing what we can at Carolina, in the Chapel Hill and Carver area to protect our students and our surrounding communities. So if you have any questions about volunteering or how to get involved with the portion that I'm overseeing, please feel free to reach out to me. Or if you have any questions regarding the virus itself, how it spreads, how it infects the host, I love talking about COVID research. So please reach out to me about that as well. Thank you so much, and thanks for everybody being here.
Hi, my name is Kate. I'm a junior studying chemistry. And I'm really going to be working with several different areas of this. So I'm going to be doing quarantine support. I'm going to be working with volunteer engagement, and then I'm going to be co-leading contact tracing with Connor. So there's a lot going on here. And while of course I'm really excited to make this campus as safe as possible this semester, I'm overly excited to create a community in our peers here this semester. I feel like even though we may have all been in different places, or even some people are here this semester, it was really isolating at times. I know I felt that really hard. It's hard to just be in your room, even though there's people on the other side of the screen, it's not the same. So I want us to feel connected here, and we're gonna be working on a lot of safe events for you to meet people and ways for you to interact with this group of people, and really feel like you're giving back to your community together. Thanks.
That's good, Helena, thanks. So we have about 250 active volunteers this week alone, helping with move-in and helping at the COVID testing sites. In addition to that, in average, we have about 250 active volunteers on the gen ed side, as well as 250 volunteers on the health professional side. We do have about 800 volunteers in our database, so that's pretty exciting. Of course, this is going to be a semester-long activity, so we will not turn anyone away. If you know students who are interested in participating in this, come on, send them our way. I'll put some information to share across again in the chat. But this really is an opportunity for our students to lead and serve during this time. They want to, as you can hear, they want to be engaged and really make our community safe and together. So with that, I can open it up to questions, and thanks so much for the opportunity to share this initiative.
Meg, I would just like to make a comment and just a big thank you to you for organizing this. The impact of this is enormous for this campus. And it was just a great reminder listening to those students, why we're here.
And Debbie Thorpe mentioned in the chat as well, we also have students helping with the vaccine effort. Most of our health professions are doing that too. And it's just, I mean, as a faculty member here, to see our students do this, it's filled me back up again during this time. So wonderful.
Mimi, you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah. Thank you for telling me. Meg, this is amazing. There are a lot of wonderful comments in the chat affirming this work. And thank you so much for taking the lead on this and putting this in place. I think we can all both admire our students' commitment. And just as you said, I think it does really help us all remember what it is we're doing in the midst of this really difficult moment. So thank you for that. Our last few minutes, I think, are designated for other questions and comments that people want to make. So let's open that up. Shana, do you see questions that you want to bring to the table?
There was a question, and it's about vaccinations. Are there any talks about mass vaccinations of the students?
So I do know that Campus Health has submitted the paperwork to become a vaccinator for the COVID vaccine. Obviously, that's going to be quite some time from now when the general population is able to be vaccinated. I think the general population is phase 5, but some students might fall into phase 4, which is adults that are high risk. So I think Campus Health is trying to become a site that is able to receive vaccine, but probably a mass vaccination clinic, that would be pretty far down the line for general population.
Thank you. There's a question about staff working with and supervising students in a non-instructional capacity, but I think we got the answer to that one, that those folks would be considered potentially essential if they meet the criteria.
And I think the last question we have also answered about personnel cuts and how that will be handled. But I think that was addressed in the earlier conversation.
Okay. Are there other questions, comments from the floor? David?
Thank you. This is a slightly more student related, but there had been a Board of Governors ruling that had extended student debt from March 2020 and to September 15th. And I was wondering if maybe the chancellor knew if that was going to be continued into 2021 with kind of student debt protection.
David, I do not, but we will look into that and get an answer for you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think we are coming to a close. I'm not hearing any further questions or comments at this moment. Certainly, ongoing meetings next week, or Deb, I do see your hand is up. Is that a remainder or a new question?
Yeah, I had a quick follow-up. So I think our chancellor and provost made it very clear that we are not going to have a touchstone point about what happens beyond February 8th. So is it okay, is it fine to conclude that as of today, if whatever the COVID outbreak remains at what we are going to resume in-person classes on February 8th, which is a Monday?
Provost, Chancellor?
That's the plan as we stand here at 4:54 on January 15th. And as I said, we will continue to monitor this every day and provide updates if there are any changes.
Thank you.
And Katie Musgrove.
Thanks, Mimi. I just had a quick clarifying question about the Carolina Together testing program for the on-campus sites. The email guidance that Becky's team sent out mentioned wording specifically that I wanted to clarify about those accessing campus regularly versus not accessing campus regularly. The word regularly is troublesome in that I have in-person duties, and I know many others have in-person duties, but I'm not regularly technically on campus, but I do access campus occasionally. So is testing open for those accessing campus versus not accessing campus? I think the term regularly is just causing some problems.
Mayor, you want to take that?
I'm happy to. Yeah, thanks, Bob.
So yeah, Katie, thank you for a great question. Our intent is to make sure that our staff and faculty and employees of the healthcare system, UNC, et cetera, have access to testing if they would like to have it. So yes, please, if you find someone having some questions about that language with the word regularly or not, and they worry whether or not they would qualify for being able to have a test performed, please send them our way. They more than welcome to participate in the testing program.
Thank you, Dr. Barzan.
All right, terrific. Suzanne Gullidge has asked me to put out a reminder, and that is that Tuesday, January 19th at midnight is the deadline for nominations for Secretary of the Faculty. The call was made on December 14th. Please nominate colleagues or yourself with consideration of qualifications and our aim to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. And those more information about that, I believe, can be found on the faculty governance website. Is that true, Helena?
Yes, and I'm putting the link in the chat right now.
Okay, thank you very much.
You can find it also find it if you go under the news tab.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, with that, we'll call this meeting to a close. Shana, anything you want to, concluding things you'd like to say, or?
So I just wanted to close with an observation that I made the other day. We were in a meeting and somebody made the comment, "We will get through this." And I said, no, we are getting through it. I think that more accurately states all the work that we've done to get to this place. So kudos to you all. We are getting through this, and we continue to do the work to get through it. So I hope that we remember the words of Dr. King and reach out to each other, connect with each other, support each other. Love wins always.
All right. And I don't think I can say anything to top that. So I will say happy Friday and happy weekend. And I'm assuming all are in agreement with adjournment.
Thank you.
Until next time. Bye.